So I was writing these songs, not thinking, what would the fans think of it? What would direct companies, what would the reviewers make of it? I just made the music that I loved.
To lose it all, a second out of time. Hear the quiet voice, I turned and walked away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Prog Dog Chat. I have a special guest today. It is Rob Reed from, well, you may know him from Magenta. That's how I knew Rob, from Magenta a few years ago. Discovered them on Bandcamp. And he has a brand new project out, a new album called Pictures from the Other Side, which I've actually written a review yet. You haven't seen it, but it's on progdog.ca. The project is called CYAN, and Pictures from the Other Side. Excellent album, really.
Thank you.
Honestly,
Thank you.
It's a great album. Why don't we start off? You just tell me a little about the new album.
Okay. Well, say it's a strange old one because it's basically a reworking of an album I made back in the 90s when I just left school. And my sort of first band I was in school was called CYAN. A bunch of school kids wanted to be Genesis, made a demo, sent it off. It got into the hands of Nick Barrett from Pendragon, who sent it on to a record company in Holland, and they asked for an album. And all my mates had all left school, so I was left on my own. So I made this album on my own, singing and playing all the instruments. And it did really well back in the 90s. And we did another 2 albums under the sort of title of CYAN. And then sort of Magenta came along, and me and Tina started Magenta, and I sort of forgot all the CYAN stuff, put it on hold. And then it's 20 years of Magenta. And then I just thought, oh, those songs are really good that I wrote in school, on these first album. I thought, what would it sound like if I was to rework them all with all the technology I had today? And that's what I've done. And last year we released For King and Country, which was the first CYAN album. It did really, really well. And now it's the second album, Pictures from the Other Side. And it's more than just a reworking. It's a complete rewrite, rearrangement, reimagining. It's everything. It's just taking the bare bones. Because back in the day when I did the albums, I had very little technology. And now I have an amazing studio and 20 or 30 years of experience, really, to throw at it. So, it's been really interesting to go back to those songs and hear them as they should have been. I always thought the songs were good. I didn't like, because on the first album, I was singing it and I can't sing. And on the second 2, I had someone else singing, and they were never to the full potential. They did okay. But say back in those days, prog was a dirty word, a swear word. So nobody wanted to be prog. So I was making these records. They would sell into Europe and sort of into America and South America. But now there's a bigger market. And say, having done Magenta for 20 years, I've learned so much, really.
Yeah. Well, what have you learned in 20 years? How can you sum it up?
Oh, well, the biggest, there's pros and cons. What I've lost from the original songs is the innocence I had when I wrote these songs. I was in school, or I just left school. I was not part of the music industry. I was just dreaming of being Genesis. So yes. So I was writing these songs, not thinking, what would the fans think of it? What would direct companies, what would the reviewers make of it? I just made the music that I loved. So there's a definite innocence in there, which has gone, and I'll never get it back, But then I've learned I'm a better songwriter, a better arranger, and I've got to work with much better players. And say on this record, I've got Peter Jones singing, who's got his own solo career and sings with Camel. And he's one of the best male singers, really. So it was that was the tipping point. When I heard him singing these new arrangements, I knew that I had something special, really, because it's all about the vocal in the end. Doesn't matter how clever the tracks are, the arrangements, how clever the guitarist is. It doesn't matter if the vocalist is rubbish. You've had it. And I've been lucky to have Pete, who's an amazing singer, and Christina from Magenta, who's also an amazing singer. So I'm very lucky.
Actually, that was a notable feature in my review of the album was the vocals.
Yeah.
Really amazing vocals, also incredible harmonies. Is it Christina who's singing then on the album?
No, it's a girl called Angharad. She's a Welsh singer. She's got a Welsh name, which is hard to pronounce, but she's singing on it because I did consider having Tina, and she's the obvious choice, but I wanted to have a different color on it. I think Tina's got a bit more oomph, a bit more balls to her singing, but on this one, I wanted a bit more of an angelic voice that would complement Pete's vocal, with the harmonies. And it's lovely when she comes in. It sort of sits above the track, and it's a great combination.
How did you find Angharad to sing this album?
I've known her for years because I do a lot of music for TV with the Welsh language, and she sings a lot of sort of traditional songs. She also sings on my solo albums, and she's totally unaware that her voice is on these records and that everyone loves it. And she sang on my Compendium album back in, I was about 10 years old. She sang on my solo albums and now on this, and everyone's commenting how good it is. But she's a school teacher who sings as well, and she's got no idea. I say to her, the reviews, I love your vocal, and she's got no idea of it. But she got this amazing, incredible voice.
She does.
Incredible.
Yeah, I agree. So the album has a couple of really long tracks.
Yes.
What the last track, Nosferatu, and the second last track, I don't remember the name of it, but I thought it was really interesting how you saved those tracks to finish the album, because to me it really pulled it all together into an incredible package. I love those last two songs, especially.
Yeah, well, that was it. It was strange because each of the tracks have undergone massive transformations, but the last one, the Nosferatu, had undergone the least, really. But it's still extra bits in it and stuff. But as I said, when I was writing these songs, prog wasn't a swear word. So was a swear word, I should say. So, you weren't allowed to do all that, but I was like, I didn't care. I just wanted to make an epic like Nosferatu. And I love all the Hammer horror films and all the early Universal horror films. So to write a song about vampires was perfect. But what's actually happened on the record, the original album had 8 tracks on it. And by the time I'd actually extended all the tracks, I had almost 90 minutes worth of music, and it was too much. So I've taken 2 tracks off the album, and they are going to be released as like a mini album in March, because one of them, a track called Guardians, is actually 25 minutes long. It's even more of an epic. But it would have been, I could have done a double album, but it would have been too much. And, I just think what's on the record is just enough. It's enough. You have everything. You have short tracks, sort of commercial tracks. Then you have the epic at the end. Put in another 25 minutes on it would have pushed people over the edge. So, and keeping that back, but it's an incredible track. It's a monster. So, yeah.
I bet. I look forward to that. Yeah. I want to latch onto your thought about how prog was a dirty word. I know what that was like. I remember that time. It's been very gradual, I would say, but how has prog evolved? Why is it not a dirty word anymore?
Oof. Ooh, and that's a hell of a question. It's really strange. I remember back in the 90s, when I did CYAN, and even when I was doing Magenta, because alongside doing the CYAN, I was doing like a pop. We had a band, me and Christina from Magenta had a pop band, and we were trying to get record deals and writing these pop tunes and things. And when all that collapsed and he nearly killed us, that's when I started Magenta. But when we started Magenta, I basically went, right, I'm going to make the most prog album in the world. I didn't care. I was like, right, we're going to make a double album, all concept, blah, blah, blah. We did that, and everyone loved it because everyone was scared to do it at the time. But what's happened now is a lot of bands back in the day were scared to say they were prog bands. It was almost like a denial. Oh, we're a rock band. We're not a prog band. But now everybody wants to be a prog band. And one of the big reasons is that the audience, the people that buy the records, they are the last genre of music that will actually pay for records. You know, they've got income. They want a box set. They want a they want a CD. They want a vinyl. They want a T-shirt. They want a surround mix. So a lot of bands have gone, oh, we'll have a bit of that. Do you mean? And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we are prog now, and everybody wants to be prog. It's like, whoa, oh Lord, no, you haven't paid your dues. You know, I was there in the dark days doing it. You know, but yeah, you know, it seems to be a lot more accessible, but it seems to be quite broad now. There's a lot of things which I think, well, that's not prog, that's heavy metal, or that's heavy rock, or that's indie. That's not what I think of my prog. You know, my prog was melodic, long songs with orchestral bits and, you know, solos and things. That was my prog, but, you know, each to their own. As long as people are still buying it and still listening to it, I'm happy.
You probably agree with me that the internet has had a big influence on music. And it seems to me that now that I'm looking back, the press is, you could point a finger at the press because they were kind of influential. So if they said, oh, prog is not cool anymore, everyone said, oh, I guess prog isn't cool anymore because NME has an article or something. Well, my kids learned about prog through a meme that had Steve Howe playing guitar at the beginning of Roundabout. Which is all over the internet. And of course, I play guitar around the house, so I started playing that. They recognized it right away. And I said, you guys know that song? How do you know this song? Because they're not that interested in prog, it seems. Oh, actually, that's not true. They liked Rush. I was playing Rush in the car a lot. Okay, they liked Rush.
Well, yeah, you know, no, it is that. I think, you know, definitely now it's so broad, and people's music, you know, they're getting music from so many different places, and YouTube, and people are searching stuff, and Spotify, they're getting random stuff thrown to them, and they're discovering it. But I think, but what makes, you know, all those, that classic era of the 70s where everyone goes back to, was my daughter's the same. She loves Pink Floyd, and I never played it to her, but she's discovered it, and Kate Bush and Supertramp. It's because they're great songs, and we've lost a bit of that with modern pop music. And, you know, the song is not king, but back in the day, everybody was writing killer songs with hooks and melodies. And that's why everyone goes back to it. And I wish that people would actually learn the art of writing songs with choruses and things, you know, rather than, especially in prog, you know, it's just riddle. And it's like, no, you got to have a hook. Genesis had hooks. They had stings, ripples, you can sing along with it. And Rush, you know, Spirit of the Radio, there was complicated time signatures, but there was always a payoff with a chorus you could sing or a hook. Mm-hmm. And that's where I spend my life, searching for those hooks and melodies. And I think in the CYAN album, especially, you know, this new one, there's great melodies in there which draw you in, you know, and it's a great singer, so it all works, you know. So
tell me a little about Peter Jones singing from Camel.
Peter is just an extraordinary talent. You know, he plays with he plays keyboards and sax and sings with Camel. He's blind from birth, but his musical ability, he can play keyboards, guitars, recorders, saxophone. He's a great writer. And I sort of came across him. Somebody sent me a tape of his first album that he was making. He didn't have a deal or anything. And we had a record label. And I said, this is amazing. I haven't heard anything as good as this, with the vocal and a sort of Genesis feel. And we put the album out. And so I've known him for the last 5 or 6 years, really, through his releases. And when I was considering re-recording the CYAN, I sort of put it off for ages, and people were saying, just get Pete to sing it. He's amazing. I was like, he does Camel, he does this. I don't want to add to his burden. And then finally I cracked. I said, look, Pete, have a go. Just sing one track for me. And he did it. And when I heard it, I just thought, oh my God, this is just a marriage made in heaven. It's just brilliant. You know, putting this sort of lush arrangements around his vocal. And it's great. And, you know, we've done a few shows, a couple of festivals, and it's a fantastic band. It's all the great players, and they're all great people as well, which is really nice. There's no ego, which I'm not a big fan of in bands.
So how is it in the UK as far as making a living at music? I get the sense that you've probably diversified your talents, and you've done some work, you said, with television and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Or...
I did a lot of that over the last sort of 10, 15 years to sort of supplement doing the prog and that. But for the last 10 years, that's all I've done is I just make records, and it's fantastic. And I'm so lucky to do it. But I've got to have, if I just had one band, if I was just Magenta day in, day out, then I couldn't do it. I couldn't release a Magenta album every 4 months or 5 months. And I go mad. I get bored of doing the same thing. But now I can do a Magenta record. Then 6 months later, I can do a CYAN album. Then another 6 months later, I can do a solo album and whatever else I want to do. So it's the combination of the various projects allow me to survive really. And I'm just really lucky. And I'm so thankful. And I hope it's an arrangement I've got with the fans that I make, in my estimation, I make the best records I can. All the money goes into making these records. They sound amazing. They lovely mixed. They well recorded. They packaged lovely. The videos look amazing. So it's, if they can fund me, it's like the old Patreons back in the day, and with the writers, and as long as they fund me to do it, then I'm happy to make this music and give them the best I can, really. So, which works.
That's the thing about Pictures from the Other Side, is that it's super well produced. What was the process of recording it? Was it mostly in your home studio?
Well, I've got a studio here, which is not my home. It's down, it's about a couple of miles from where I live. And I've got a drum booth next door. And yeah, it's a lot of the guitaring is done with file sharing, which is the way you do it these days. You send the backing track to a guitarist who's on the opposite side of the country. They send it back. But I did the drums here and all my parts, and Pete did the vocal in his place and sent that down, which I love. I love receiving the parts, and then you bring them up and add them to the mix, and you're like, oh, it sounds amazing. And you're off, but I just love the whole recording, mixing, arrangements, and making records. That's what I love. I don't mind the live stuff's okay, but I love being in the studio, and every day I come in, I'm excited going, right, what am I going to do today? Because I got all this gear, all the guitars, and I can do whatever I want. And I love all the sort of small parts of the arrangements on the record, which make it all, all the 12-string guitars, mandolins, recorders, saxophones, orchestra. It all adds this color, which I love. And the better I can make it, I get more enjoyment of it. I love the mixing side of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, the mixing I find it kind of hard mixing drums. That's for me the hard part.
You've got to have a good drummer. The key to drums is a good drummer who hits it properly, and they've got to be tuned. There's no mystery with a mic in, and if it's badly played or badly tuned, then you're never going to get it right. Do you know what I mean? For me, I've been lucky enough to work with Simon Phillips, and when he sends his drums, they're so immaculate. You just bring them up and they're there. Do you mean I am going to do nothing to them? And that's a sign of a good drummer. So it's normally the drum kit or the drummer is at fault, not the engineer, because there's no mystery.
I was just wondering how you feel about this. I sometimes worry, I don't know if it's a genuine worry or not, but I kind of a little concerned that prog may die with us. I mean, we're older, past 50, or for example, I'm over 50, and and young kids are listening to a lot of EDM, a lot of electronic stuff. They're catching on. They're realizing that, like my son said, all the good music seems to be in the past, Dad, from the 70s and 80s. Yeah. And I said, it's true, and I'm encouraging him to get into songwriting.
Yeah.
I don't know what's how are your hopes for the future?
Whoa, it's weird because, well, hopefully, what sparked me is like my interest in it. I listened to a Genesis record. I listened to Tubular Bells when I was younger, and I thought, oh my God, I want to do that. So I was inspired by that. I saw Genesis play live, and I thought, I want to do that. I saw It Bites. I saw all these bands. I just hope that the youngsters hear and see something which inspires them to do it. That I think that's what they need to have heroes, and the problem is like today's heroes are like Adele or Ed Sheeran or rappers and things. Well, you know, it's not the songwriters. The song, write the song, and it, people will relate to the song. You can do all the technology in the world, but it's the song. You got to be able to play it on a piano. So I hope that a generation will get interested in songwriting, and that will push it forward. And it'll come back around.
I guess I'll wrap up by saying I'm going to put all the links down below for the album, which is not out yet officially, is it? It's coming out.
A couple of weeks, yeah, a couple of weeks. The 17th, I think, it's out.
Right.
This month, yeah.
And I'm sure you have other plans for the future as well. You're probably keeping busy.
It never ends. I've got a new Magenta record which I've just written now, so that's I got to record that yet. So that's next up. So I'm excited by that. So yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm really grateful to have met you, and truly, CYAN Pictures from the Other Side is a great album. And
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Fine work. So
yeah.
Well, thanks for the interview, and hopefully we can chat again some other time.
Yeah, for longer next time.
Okay, and have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.